This Christmas is special. My fiancé is moving in with us. My son, Michael, announced at Christmas Eve dinner in Portland, Oregon. You'll get used to it. Brittany, the fiancé, smiled, looking straight into my eyes. That smile was as cold as the December wind lashing the window frames of my house. But her smile vanished when I smiled too. I took a folder from my bag and said, "Well then, I have news too." The air went silent as if cut by a knife. The lights on the tree still blinked, but there was no magic left around the table, only tension. Michael looked at me, a piece of turkey frozen halfway to his mouth. Brittany frowned, for the first time dropping the sweet mask she wore when company was around. "What news, Mom?" Michael asked, in the same voice he used as a child whenever he knew he'd done something wrong. I remembered that exact tone when he broke his grandmother's vase at 8 years old. But now Michael wasn't the wide-eyed boy who ran into my arms after nightmares anymore. He was a 35-year-old man who seemed to have forgotten a mother's sacrifices. He forgot the nights I sewed until my fingertips bled to pay for his schooling. He forgot the day I sold my wedding ring to buy him his first bicycle. Memories crashed over me like rough waves, Michael sleeping on my chest, tiny fingers clutching my blouse whenever thunder boomed. The smell of his hair after I washed it with cheap chamomile shampoo, his laughter filling every corner of this house, the home I built with all my love. When he was little, Michael used to say I was his superhero, I whispered, more to myself than to them. He promised that when he grew up, he'd take care of me the way I took care of him. Brittany let out a dry laugh. "Miss Janice, kids say a lot of things. Adults have different responsibilities. Responsibilities, that word pierced me like a poisoned arrow. So what are my responsibilities now? To become a shadow in my own house? To pretend not to see her going through my pension statements every month? To pretend it doesn't hurt when I'm treated like a burden?" "Mom, Brittany's right," Michael said. Those 5 words were 5 stabs. "We need privacy. We're a young couple. You understand, right?" They always told me to understand when he came home late because he was with her, to understand when he canceled our Sunday lunches, to understand when he stopped calling me Mom and switched to Janice as if we were strangers. "I understand," I answered, mustering a smile with all the strength I had left. "I understand more than you think." The folder in my hands felt heavy, though not as heavy as the humiliation I'd swallowed these past months. Since Brittany entered our lives, everything changed. It started with gentle remarks about my age, about how my cooking was outdated, about how her friends were uncomfortable when I was around. Then came the unwritten rules. I could no longer watch my favorite TV program in the living room because they needed their space. The armchair where I had nursed Michael and where my husband held me through cold. Nights suddenly became off limits. "The new sofa doesn't go with that old chair, Miss Janice," Brittany said with practiced fake sweetness. "How about donating it?" Donating as if my memories were trash cluttering her new decor. As if 40 years of history could be stuffed into a few garbage bags and handed to the first person who knocked. Like many women of my generation, I stayed quiet, smile, nod, adapt, until today. "All right," I rose slowly, feeling every eye pin on me. "It's time you two heard my news." The folder crinkled in my hand. 70 years of life taught me, sometimes silence is survival, but sometimes silence is surrender, and I was done surrendering. I deserve more than this. The sentence rang in my head like a mantra. Brittany tapped her perfectly painted nails on the table, a sign of impatience I knew too well. Michael shifted, waiting for me to say something soothing, to confirm I'd keep being the obedient, quiet mother I'd always been. Memories pulled me back to another time when this table brimmed with laughter and unconditional love. When Michael was 5 and woke me at 6 in the morning just to tell me he'd dreamed of dragons and I had saved him with my superpower. "What's your superpower, Mommy?" he had asked with those bright eyes that now avoided mine. "My superpower is loving you more than my own life," I had told him, kissing his sweat-damp forehead after the nightmare. How much things had changed. My love now seemed like an annoyance, an obstacle to his perfect new life with Brittany. She had appeared only 2 years ago and already done what even an earthquake couldn't, cracked our family's foundation. "Miss Janice, are you going to tell us? Or are we sitting here all night?" Brittany sang in the sugar-sweet tone she used when there were witnesses, but I knew there was poison under it. It was the same voice that told me not to use so much perfume. At a certain age, it's better to be more discreet, invisible, non-existent. That was what she really wanted me to be. I remembered the first time Michael brought her home. He was nervous, giddy. "Mom, you're going to love her. She's perfect for me." And like any good mother, I opened my heart and my home, cooked the dishes she liked, rearranged the house so she'd be comfortable. I tried to be the ideal mother-in-law every bride wants. How naive to think love could be traded for love. The first red flag came when Brittany said my bedroom was wasted space because it was too big for one person. Michael could use it as an office, she tossed out casually over breakfast, and "You could move to the guest room. It's more appropriate for someone older." The guest room, the smallest in the house, facing the service yard, loud with street noise, the room where I'd once let household help sleep years ago, and I yielded again. "If that makes you too happy," I murmured, packing 40 years of marital keepsakes into cardboard boxes. Then came the bathroom incident. "It would be more practical if we had the primary bathroom," Brittany suggested. "You can use the guest bathroom. You don't really have that many personal care items anyway." As if at 70 I had stopped being a woman, as if my little vanity was a pathetic thing to be hidden so their youth could shine. And I yielded again. I moved my toothbrush, my medications, my age spot creams, things that embarrassed me, into the small bathroom. I became a guest in my own home. The final blow. I caught Brittany going through my bank statements one afternoon when she thought I was napping. "I just want to make sure you're not being scammed, Miss Janice." She smiled, syrupy to the point of sting. "At your age, it's easy for people to take advantage. At your age, always that line, as if 70 were a terminal disease that stripped me of the ability to think, decide, and live with dignity." "Brittany's right, Mom," Michael said when I told him. "Having younger people supervise your finances is safer for you." Safer. From what? From my own autonomy? From keeping some control over the life I built with my youth? But there was one thing they didn't know: what I'd kept quiet through these months of silent endurance. While they mapped out my future without asking, I was making plans too. I don't need anyone's permission to start over. I remembered what my next-door neighbor Angela told me last week when she saw me crying in the yard. Angela was the unexpected lifeline, the woman next door who quietly watched me fade. She saw me stop hanging laundry outside because Brittany said it ruined the view. She saw me stop receiving visitors because it disrupted the young couple's routine. She saw me turn into a shadow drifting along the edges of my own home. One afternoon, when I couldn't hold it in any longer, Angela stepped over the low fence and sat beside me on the bench where I used to read. "Janice," she said, in the steady voice of someone who has lived long enough to recognize injustice, "how much longer will you let them treat you like you're invisible?" "I don't know what you mean," I lied, wiping my tears. "You do," Angela said, gentle but direct. I've watched you fade, day after day. The Janice I knew wouldn't have let anyone treat her like that. She was right. The old Janice would have stood tall at the first cutting remark. But the old Janice hadn't buried her husband, and she hadn't watched her only son drift away year by year. The day they stop underestimating me is coming, I confessed that afternoon, feeling for the first time in months a spark of the fighter I used to be, and that day is today. My news, I said, lifting the folder so they could see clearly. It's about this house. Brittany's face hardened. Michael frowned. What about the house, Mom? A lot, I replied, startlingly calm. All this time, you two drew my future without asking me, so I made my own plans. I sat up straight and opened the folder. Starting tomorrow, I'm moving into my own apartment that I've already put a deposit on. This house is in my name alone, and I've written house rules that will be enforced under legal guidance. No one changes rooms, moves belongings, or accesses my accounts. If you violate this, I will work with an attorney to protect my rights. And one last thing, Michael, if you decide to get married, I give you my blessing. But Brittany will not live here. She is not. Someone who understands respect. Brittany's mouth fell open, but no words came out. Michael paled. Mom, you can't. I can, I said, enunciating each word. Because I am the legal owner, and because I am Janice. I've been quiet long enough. I closed the folder. The tree still blinked. Outside, the cold wind swept along the porch. I stood, picked up my old wool coat, the one that's carried me through so many winters. Merry Christmas, you two, I said, warm but resolute. I'm going to my home tonight. On the threshold, I looked back. My superpower isn't endless endurance. My superpower is starting over whenever I choose. And I stepped out into air that was freezing and free, which greeted me with a smile. The folder trembled lightly in my hand, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally taking back control of my life. Brittany went rigid in her chair. I could see her calculating what that paper might mean. Michael looked genuinely confused, as if he couldn't believe his mother also had secrets or plans of her own. I didn't come to get revenge. I came to take back what's mine, I thought, watching their expectant faces. Those words had sprouted in my heart through sleepless nights as I listened to their laughter in the living room while I stayed shut in the guest room, like a prisoner in my own home. For months I was treated like a burden. I endured remarks about my age, my old-fashioned habits, how my presence disrupted their modern couple life. I let them rearrange my house without asking me a single question, changing routines I had kept for decades. They made me feel like a stranger in the place that had been my refuge for 40 years. But the worst part wasn't the obvious humiliations. It was the slow loss, losing my son piece by piece. The Michael who hugged me tight when I came home from work was gone. The boy who shared secrets while I braided his damp hair after a bath had become a stranger who barely spoke to me unless Brittany was present. I vividly remember the day I found him crying in his room. He was 12. His father had died just 6 months earlier, and he was trying to be strong, to be the man of the house, like well-meaning relatives told him. "Mom, do you think Dad would be proud of me?" he asked between sobs. "Your dad would be so proud." I cradled him like when he was small. "But you don't have to be strong all the time. I'll be strong for both of us when you can't." That night we made a pact. He would be my companion in life. I would be his unconditional support. For 20 years, we kept that promise. I worked double shifts at the garment factory so he could study engineering. I pawned the keepsake necklace to pay for a computer course he needed. I set aside my dreams so his could come true, and never once did I bring it up as a debt. The day he graduated from college, he dedicated his diploma to me. "Everything I have is thanks to you," he said, eyes damp. "When I have my own family, you'll always be part of it." Hearing those promises now is so bitter when his own family has turned me into an obstacle to be removed, delicately but firmly. "Miss Janice, are you going to keep performing, or will you just say what's in that paper?" Brittany cut in, exposing her impatience whenever she isn't the center of attention. "Brittany, come on," Michael muttered, but without any conviction. He no longer defended my right to take my time, nor even pretended to respect the woman who gave birth to him. "Fine," I said, deliberately opening the document slowly. "This is the house ownership certificate deed, title." "What document?" Michael asked, using the exact tone he gets whenever he senses trouble at work. "A document proving this house is in my name alone. It's not community property like you two thought. It's mine entirely." Silence crashed down, harsh and loud. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock that had belonged to my late mother-in-law, the same clock Brittany once said we should modernize because its sound kept her up at night. "That's impossible," Brittany said, the sweetness gone from her voice. "This house originally belonged to your parents. Michael is the only heir. Legally, he has rights." "Legally," I emphasized each word, savoring it. "I've been the sole owner of this house for 30 years. When my husband died, I handled a stack of inheritance paperwork, things neither of you ever bothered to ask about. It's true the house used to be in your grandparents' names," I continued, "but when they passed, they left it to me, not to their grandson." Michael looked at me like I was a stranger. "Why did you never tell me that?" "Because it was never necessary," I answered honestly. "I didn't think there would come a time when I'd have to prove my own son that this is my home, not a temporary favor I'm granting anyone." The truth is, I kept that information like an ace up my sleeve, not even realizing there'd be a day I'd need it. After my parents died, the probate attorney explained every detail. I put all the documents in my personal safe, thinking I'd likely never need them. I was wrong. During these months of humiliation, every night I pulled those papers out to read them again and again, reminding myself I still had power, still had options, that I wasn't completely helpless. Last week, when Angela found me crying in the garden, I told her everything, showed her the documents, explained my legal standing. "Janice," Angela said firmly, "you're holding a winning hand. Why are you playing like a loser?" She was right. I had been acting the victim when, in reality, I was the one with the power. I had let them treat me like a boarder in my own house. When I was the landlady, I had accepted crumbs of respect when I should have been treated like the lady of this house. "But there's more," I said, seeing Brittany clench her fists. "I also have documents showing my pension account has been managed without my full consent." "What do you mean?" Michael asked, his voice shrinking. "I mean, I've reviewed every transaction in my bank account over the past 6 months, and I found many interesting things." Brittany's face went pale, all color drained. At last I'd touched the one thing that scared her more than the prospect of finding another place to live. "I think you're exaggerating," Michael tried to salvage, but he sounded unsure. "Exaggerating?" I repeated, feeling the anger pent up for months finally find its voice. "Am I exaggerating when I say you've used my money to pay for things I never authorized? Am I exaggerating when I say you turned me into a stranger in my own home? Exaggerating when I say that for 6 months I've had to ask permission to use my own living room, to cook in my own kitchen, to invite my friends to my own house? With each sentence, I felt years of frustration release. Am I exaggerating when I say you've treated me like a burden to be tolerated? Brittany finally found her voice again, but it was no longer the melodious tone she used to manipulate. It was hoarse, desperate. Miss Janice, I think you've misunderstood. We were only trying to help you, to make your life easier. Help? I laughed, a bitter laugh from someone who finally sees the truth clearly. Help when you suggested donating the armchair where I nursed Michael? Help when you decided I couldn't use the primary bathroom because I don't have many personal care items. Michael shifted in his chair. For the first time in months, I glimpsed the child he once was, the child who could recognize when something was wrong. Mom, maybe there were some misunderstandings, he began, but I cut him off. There were no misunderstandings, Michael. It was a systematic campaign to make me feel unnecessary in my own life. A deliberate plan to turn me into a shadow haunting the corners. Memories rushed in like an avalanche. I remembered when Brittany invited her friends to lunch without telling me. When I came back from the pharmacy, she said right in front of everyone, "Miss Janice, could you have lunch in your room today? We're having a conversation for young adults." A conversation for young adults, as if at 70 I'd lost the ability to hold an intelligent conversation, as if my age were contagious and could ruin their youthful fun. I also remembered the morning I discovered all the plants in my garden ripped out and replaced with more modern ones. "A surprise for you," Brittany said. "Those were old. The new set makes the garden look fresher. My plants, the rose bushes I planted when Michael turned 10, the hydrangeas that carried my name and were a gift from my husband on our 20th anniversary, the jasmine vines that perfumed summer nights and reminded me of my mother all torn out and tossed like trash. And the most painful memory was last month, when my cousin Elena visited from another state. We hadn't seen each other in 5 years. I was excited to welcome family. "Who is this lady?" Brittany asked Michael when Elena rang the bell as if I didn't exist to answer for myself. "My mom's cousin," Michael said. "She stops by once in a while." "Ah," Brittany forced a smile. "Miss Janice, could you receive her in the yard? We just cleaned the living room today and don't want it messed up." In the yard, as if a 70-year-old cousin who rode the bus 4 hours to see me deserved to be received among brooms and mop buckets. And I obeyed. I took Elena to the yard, poured coffee into chipped cups, because the nice set was for special occasions. I pretended everything was fine when she asked why we couldn't sit comfortably in the living room. "She got you taking orders fast," Elena observed gently as she left. "And you got used to obeying fast." Those words haunted me for weeks. When did I lose ownership of my own life? Since when did I hand power to a woman young enough to be my daughter, who treated me worse than I would have treated household help? "Miss Janice," Brittany spoke up, trying to pull back her sweet tone. "I think you're remembering wrong. You say I'm exaggerating." "You say you love me?" I asked back, for the first time in months hearing my voice sound firm and clear. Is that love making a 70-year-old woman feel like a stranger in her own home? "Mom, please," Michael tried to step in, but I was done hearing please. "No, Michael, this time you're going to listen to me. For 35 years, since the day you were born, I put your needs ahead of everything. I sacrificed my dreams, my comfort, my future, so you had everything you needed." My voice caught as I recalled what I'd done without ever asking for repayment. Nights working late to pay for your English classes, the dresses I didn't buy so you could have new shoes, the vacations I never took to save for your education. I never asked you for anything in return. Because I thought love doesn't need receipts. I thought that when it was my turn to need care and companionship, you would naturally be there like I was there for you." Brittany looked at me with open hostility now. The sweetness she wore in public had fallen away. "But I was wrong," I said, feeling each word shed years of unmet expectations. "I was wrong to believe love is automatic, respect is inherited, and gratitude is permanent." Michael lowered his head. For the first time in months, he seemed ashamed. "These past months," I continued, "I've learned. Love without limits turns into contempt. Unconditional generosity becomes entitlement. Endless patience is mistaken for weakness." Angela, my neighbor, said something similar last week when she found me reorganizing my things in the small room. "Janice, when someone treats you badly and you don't set limits, you're teaching them that bad treatment is acceptable." "Enough," I said, my spine straightening with every word. "I'm no longer the invisible grandmother hiding in the corners. I'm no longer the annoying mother-in-law who has to ask permission to exist in her own home." The folder was still in my hand, but it no longer shook. It had become exactly what it should be, my letter of freedom. "My news," I looked straight into Brittany's eyes, "is that you two have exactly 30 days to find another place to live." Silence thudded to the floor. Even the wall clock seemed to stop ticking. "What did you say?" Brittany's voice was as sharp as a seagull's screech. "You told me I'd have to adapt." I answered with a calm that surprised me. "You said you always adapt." "Well, now it's your turn to adapt to finding a new home." Michael stared at me like I was a stranger. "Mom, you can't be serious. This is our house too." "No, Michael, this was never your house. This is my house. And for months, you two have made it very clear that I'm not welcome in my own home." Brittany shot to her feet, knocking her chair over. "Ridiculous. You can't just throw us out." "We have rights." "Rights?" I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd had in months. "What rights? The right to humiliate me in my own house? The right to make me feel like a burden? The right to use my money without permission?" "We never used your money," Brittany screamed, but her voice was already desperate. I pulled another paper from my bag. "Then what is this?" I opened the bank statement I'd requested last week. $600 for home upgrades I never approved. $400 for a dinner at a restaurant I've never set foot in. $200 for clothes I've never seen. Brittany's face went wax white. Michael turned to her, genuinely shocked. "Brittany, is that true?" I thought she never said anything," Brittany stammered, her usual composure completely gone. "Because I was taught to stay quiet," I said, feeling each word give me back a piece of my dignity. "They convinced me I was a problem, that I should be grateful for the privilege of living in my own house." The memories surged again. The afternoon I came back from buying medication and found Brittany using my credit card to shop for clothes online. I asked what she was doing. She shrugged. "Oh, Miss Janice, just a few necessary things for the house." "You don't get these modern things. Necessary things? A $200 dress was a necessary thing for the house?" I also remembered discovering my account had been used to pay for their date nights. "We work so hard," Brittany explained when I finally gathered the courage to ask. "We need to unwind now and then. Besides, what are you going to do with so much money at your age?" At my age, we always came back to my age, as if growing old were a crime that deserved punishment. "More importantly," I said, feeling my voice grow stronger with each truth, "I consulted the law." I pulled a business card from my wallet. I met with an attorney who specializes in elder law. He said what you two have been doing has a very clear name: financial and emotional abuse of an older adult. Brittany dropped into a chair as if her bones had given out. "Miss Janice, please, this is a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I cut in. "Is it a misunderstanding when I'm banned from using the living room? A misunderstanding when I have to ask permission to cook in my own kitchen?" Michael finally spoke, small and defeated. "Mom, we never meant to hurt you." "But you did." I stopped him. "And worse, you knew it. Every time you told me not to come into the living room because you needed privacy, you knew you were shutting me out. Every decision about my house that you made without asking me, you knew you were being disrespectful." I remembered the conversation 3 days ago in Angela's kitchen, when I finally laid out my finances. I cried, hands gripping the coffee cup, while Angela looked at me with the eyes of someone who understands life. "Janice, you have 2 choices. Keep being a victim of your own kindness, or remember that you're the woman who raised a child alone, worked double shifts for years, and built a decent life with your own hands." "But that's my son," I choked out. "He's all I have." "Exactly why you can't let him treat you like you're nothing," Angela replied. "If you don't respect yourself, how are you going to teach him to respect you?" Those words were the catalyst I needed. That afternoon, I went to the bank, requested all statements, and started recording every time they used my money without permission, every humiliation, every scratch on my self-respect. I also went to the attorney. Angela recommended a young man, but understanding. After reviewing the file, he said, "You have full grounds to win. This house is legally yours. Your pension is untouchable." And what they've done constitutes abuse. For the first time in months, I felt hope. The attorney explained further, many older adults in America are abused by relatives, and most don't report it because they think it's normal, a form of respect for the young. Brittany tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand. Today I'm going to say everything. No one is cutting me off. And no, it isn't normal. It isn't normal to turn me into an unpaid maid in my own house. It isn't normal to access my money without my explicit consent. It isn't normal to treat me like an old chair in the way. Mom, Michael exhaled, we never wanted to hurt you. But you did deliberately. I looked him straight in the eyes. Starting today, every decision related to my house and my finances will be made by me. 30 days, you two arrange to move out. If not, my attorney will do his part. I closed the folder. And Michael? I softened, but stayed firm. I don't want to lose you, but I will not lose myself to keep you near. You're welcome to come back when you know how to show respect. Outside, the cold wind swept across the porch in Portland. In the rustle of dry leaves, I heard something else, the sound of my own heartbeat settling. Today, Janice is no longer a shadow. Today, I am the homeowner and the owner of my life. Sometimes I think I'm losing my mind. I ask myself if I'm truly as annoying as they say, if I really am as heavy a burden as they see me. Janice, Angela answered firmly, that is exactly what they want you to believe. When someone makes you doubt your own reality, it means they're trying to control you. But what can I do? That's my son, Angela. He's all I have. Which is exactly why you must act. A child who truly loves his mother won't let anyone treat her badly, not even himself. Those words were like a bucket of cold water thrown straight at me. They helped me see motherhood does not equal silent suffering. These past months, I looked straight at Michael and then at Brittany. I've learned something I should have learned long ago. True love does not accept humiliation. Respect isn't begged for, it's required. And dignity is non-negotiable. Brittany straightened, trying to salvage a shred of her lost authority. Miss Janice, You're overreacting. When people live together, everyone has to adapt." "Adapt?" I burst out, feeling the pent-up anger finally find its way out. "The only one who's been adapting all this time is me. I adapted to eating in the small room whenever there were guests. I adapted to not watching my favorite program because it was too loud. I adapted to tiptoeing around my own house like a thief. I had held my tongue too long. I adapted to my money being treated like a common fund. I adapted to being treated like I was invisible. I adapted to my son talking to his mother as if I were an annoying stranger." Michael held his head, and for the first time since Brittany entered our lives, he looked truly ashamed. "But from now on, I won't adapt anymore," I said, feeling each word give back a piece of my lost soul. "It's your turn to adapt to the consequences of your actions." I pulled out another document. "This is a request to the bank to allow transactions only when I'm present and sign in person. Current cards will be canceled and new cards issued under legal guidance. Beginning tomorrow, the current credit card will be canceled and replaced with a new card only I will know." Brittany turned even paler. "Miss Janice, that is normal, reasonable, something you should have done from the start." I remembered the shame when the bank employee pointed out the unauthorized transactions. "Ma'am, are you aware of all these charges? Some are highly questionable. A luxury restaurant I had never set foot in, a clothing store I had never shopped at, a spa I'd been told was not my scene, so I shouldn't go in. And there's more," I continued, watching the growing panic on Brittany's face. "I will change the locks exactly as legally advised by my attorney." "You can't do that," Brittany screamed, completely losing control. "I can, and I will. This is my house. I decide who is allowed in." Michael lifted his head, eyes red. I couldn't tell if from shame or anger. "Mom, please, can we talk about this like adults?" "Like adults?" I repeated, with a sting of irony. "Michael, for months, I've tried to talk like adults. Every time I said I was uncomfortable with the changes in the house, you told me I wasn't adapting. Every time I brought up my money, you told me I didn't understand modern needs. The truth is, I had tried many times, but always met with excuses, minimization, or was flat out ignored. I remember clearly the conversation 2 months ago when I finally gathered the courage to say I was uncomfortable with so many changes. Mom, you answered with that patient, condescending tone reserved for small children. I understand that change is hard at your age, but you have to trust that we know what's best for everyone. At my age, know what's best. As if at 70 I'd lost the ability to know what's good for myself. But from now on the rules have changed, I said clearly. I will not let anyone make decisions about my life without me. I will not pretend to agree with things that hurt me. Angela gave me the courage to get here. Last night she said, tomorrow you will take back your life, remind everyone, and yourself, who you are. She was right. These past months, I had forgotten who I was, turned into a caricature, a docile old woman, grateful for the scraps of attention tossed her way. But I am not that woman. I am Janice, the woman who worked double shifts to raise her son, the woman who faced widowhood with dignity and resilience, the woman who built this home, this life, this stability with her own hands. It's time for that woman to return. Miss Janice, please, let's be reasonable. Brittany tried to revive her sweet tone, but the tremor betrayed her. We're family. Families talk things out. They don't kick each other out. Family? I looked straight at her. For the first time in months, I didn't avoid anyone's gaze. Family takes care of each other. Family respects each other. Family doesn't steal or humiliate. Michael shifted restlessly in his chair. Mom, maybe we can reach some kind of agreement. The only agreement, I cut in, surprising even myself with my resolve, is that you two find another place to live. 30 days is more than generous considering how you've treated me. Brittany jumped up, her face twisted with rage. Ridiculous! You can't throw us out like that. Michael, say something. But Michael stayed silent, staring down at his hands as if the answer were written there. During these months of humiliation, I had dreamed of this moment 1,000 times. I imagined what it would feel like to reclaim my power, my voice, my dignity, but I never expected it to feel this freeing. Do you know what's saddest in all this, Michael? I asked, my voice soft but sorrowful. It's not that you disappointed me, it's that you disappointed yourself. He looked up. For a moment, I saw the boy he once was, the boy who promised he would always take care of me. You used to defend me when people whispered about a single mother. You used to hug me when I came home exhausted from work and tell me I was the best mom in the world. My voice tightened as I remembered those moments when we were an unbeatable team. You once swore that when you had your own family, I would always be part of it, not a burden, not a nuisance, part of it. Michael squeezed his eyes shut as if my words were too painful to hear. But that young man is gone. I held steady even as my eyes shimmered. And in his place is a man who lets others mistreat his mother, who closes his eyes when money is taken from her account, who pretends not to see when they turn her into a stranger in her own home. Mom, stop, Michael whispered, his voice breaking. No. For months, you told me to stop feeling, stop having opinions, stop existing with dignity. Now it's your turn to listen. Brittany tried to cut in, but I gave her a look that could shatter glass. And you? I turned to her. You came into this house as a guest. I welcomed you with love, opened my doors, treated you like the daughter I never had. I remember the first months you and Michael were dating. I tried to connect, shared family recipes, gave you my mother's pearl necklace for your birthday. I gave you my trust, my affection, my respect, and you trampled it like trash. I never, Brittany stammered. Never told me my habits were old-fashioned, never hinted my friends were too old to come over, never made me feel like a bothersome antique to be tolerated. Each question was a slap of truth. Each word a truth I had buried for too long. You came to erase me, I said clearly. To turn my son into someone who didn't recognize his mother, to take over my life, my house, my money, my place. Those words had been waiting years to be spoken. But you were wrong about one important thing, I said, my spine lifting another notch. You mistook me for weak. Angela was right last week. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your patience for submission, your unconditional love for stupidity. I am not weak. I repeated it for myself. I am the woman who raised a child alone after my husband died. I held 2 jobs for years to secure my family's future. I built this house, this life, this steadiness with my own hands. Michael looked at me as if seeing me for the first time in years. Maybe he was. I am a woman who deserves respect. Those 5 words rang through the room like a rallying call. Deserving to be consulted on decisions that affect my life, deserving to retain control over my own money, deserving to be treated with dignity in my own home. Brittany had lost all composure. Her eyes flashed with a mix of rage and panic. This is abuse. You can't throw us out. Abuse? I laughed, not a joyful laugh, but the laugh of someone who finally sees the greatest irony of her life. Brittany, for months, you're the one who's been abusing. Emotional abuse, financial abuse, psychological abuse. And I closed with, 30 days, pack up, move out. After that, the rest will be handled by my attorney. I took my phone out of my purse. In fact, I've recorded a few of our conversations from the past few weeks' clips where you humiliate me, belittle me, and treat me like I'm incompetent. Brittany's eyes flew wide with panic. Illegal! No, Brittany, I replied calmly. I was advised by an attorney on how to document, and when appropriate, record to protect myself in full compliance with the law. Since consulting an elder rights attorney, I started documenting everything. Every snide remark, every insult, every moment they treated me like I was invisible. I have evidence of it all, I said, feeling power fit my hand like a perfect glove, evidence of unauthorized charges, of constant humiliation, of the isolation they imposed on me. Michael finally spoke, barely audible. Mom, did you really record our conversations? I recorded my own defense, I corrected him. Because no one else was going to do that for me. In the weeks of preparation, I realized I'm stronger than I thought, wiser than they made me believe, and my worth is greater than the box they tried to force me into. 30 days, I repeated, steering the conversation back to the main point. 30 days for you two to find another place to live. 30 days to learn how to stand on your own without using an older woman's money. But, Mom, Michael tried one last plea, where are we supposed to go? We don't have savings for a move. You should have thought of that before you spent my money on expensive restaurants and designer clothes, I answered, without an ounce of pity. For the first time in months, I didn't feel guilty for putting myself first. I also no longer felt the need to rescue my son from the consequences of his own choices. And one more thing. A strange peace flooded my chest. It's not my responsibility to fix problems you two created. For 35 years, my responsibility was caring for Michael. That responsibility ended when he decided his mother was optional. My words sounded harsh but true. And for the first time in months, the truth didn't scare me. Miss Janice, please. Brittany tried again, all sweetness gone from her voice. We're young. We need time to get organized. Young, I echoed, slowly chewing on the word. Yes, young enough to work, to save, to be responsible for your own lives. Young enough to think about your future before betting everything on my limitless generosity. Michael jumped up and walked toward the window. Mom, I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've had together. After everything. I stood too, anger rising, but giving me strength. Michael, look me in the eye and tell me, when was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you asked how I felt, what I needed, what I thought? He kept staring outside, silent. When was the last time you hugged me when it wasn't my birthday or Christmas? When was the last time you sat with me over coffee and told me about your day? The silence between us widened like a chasm dug by one missed conversation after another, one refused hug after another. These past months, I said more softly, but no less firmly, I've had more meaningful conversations with Angela, my neighbor, than you've had with me all year. Painfully true, Angela had become my confidant, my emotional support, the family I'd lost under my own roof. Angela asks how I slept last night, asks if I need anything from the grocery store, asks what I think about the news, the weather, about life. She treats me like my opinions matter. I remembered yesterday's rehearsal when Angela helped me practice for tonight's confrontation. Janice, she said, when you say all this, they'll go after your guilt. They'll remind you of the good memories. They'll promise to change. And if they promise to change? I asked, genuinely unsure. Remind them they've had months to change on their own and chose not to. Change that comes only after being confronted isn't real change, it's survival mode. Those words echoed back as I looked at Michael's and Brittany's desperate faces. Look, Mom, Michael turned back to me. I know we messed up, but we can fix this. We can be a family again. Messed up? I repeated, feeling how that word shrank months of suffering. Michael, these weren't slip-ups. They were conscious, sustained decisions to treat me as less than human. Brittany clutched Michael's arm. Tell her she can't do this. Tell her we're her only family. But I was no longer the woman who sat at that table earlier, the one panicking to keep the family together at any cost. I had learned self-love is not selfish. Brittany, I said, gentle but cold, the only thing you care about is that your golden goose is done laying eggs. You don't care about my well-being. You're afraid of losing your comforts. Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. I'd seen too many fake tears these past months. All this time, I went on. You made me believe I should be grateful to have you two in my life, grateful for your presence, your care, your company. I walked toward the living room, to the armchair they once tried to make me donate, but I kept the chair where I nursed Michael, where I cried for my late husband, where I read thousands of children's stories. But now I understand. You two were the lucky ones. You lived rent-free in a beautiful house, spent money you didn't earn, and had an unpaid housekeeper who cooked, cleaned, and stayed silent while being mistreated. Michael followed me into the living room. Mom, you were never our housekeeper. Then what do you call it? I cut in. When someone cooks for others, cleans for others, and can't use the common areas in the very house she lives in. He had no answer. Someone who has to ask permission to invite friends over, who can't watch TV in the main room, who must disappear whenever the homeowners have guests. What do you call that? Each sentence was a nail in the coffin of my old self, the corpse of make-believe harmony. It was time for truth, not comforting lies. But that ends now, I said, spine straight, pride restored. I pulled out the final paper. I've filed for a protective order. If after the 30-day period you come back here without permission or try to threaten or pressure me in any way, the police will handle it. Brittany collapsed into the couch, completely drained. You can't be serious. I'm more serious than I've ever been in my life, I replied. In 70 years, I've learned many things, but the most important I learned in these last months, love without respect is just abuse wearing a mask. Angela helped me reach that conclusion. Real love never asks you to trade away your dignity, she said. Real love never asks you to disappear. I looked at them both in turn. You mistook my love for weakness, my patience for stupidity, my generosity for obligation. Michael stepped closer, eyes red. Mom, please, you're everything to me. No. I stopped him before he could touch my hand. You were everything to me, and you decided that wasn't enough. You decided you needed something more important than your mother's love. Tears streamed down his face, but they no longer moved me. I had cried too many lonely tears in that small room for his to change my mind now. You needed a free house, easy money, and an unpaid maid. You got all that. Now it's time to get to it on your own. 30 days. I repeated one last time, returning to the table where it all began. By January 24th, I want this house free of your things and your presence. Brittany shot to her feet, eyes burning with pure hatred. You'll regret this, Janice. You'll be alone. When you're old and sick, no one will take care of you. I'm already old, I smiled serenely, and I've already been alone. The difference is that now it's my choice. Words that once would have shattered my heart now slid off me like rain on glass. They had no power left. I would rather be alone with dignity than crowded with humiliation, I said, as calm spread through my chest. Michael stepped forward again, panicked. "Mom, we're family." "Families forgive. Families also respect," I cut in, final and firm. "And you two chose not to respect me. Now I choose not to allow it ever again." I walked to the front door and flung it wide open. The cold air of Christmas night swept in, carrying out the toxic atmosphere that had ruled my home for months. "Dinner is over," I announced. "So is this conversation." Brittany muttered curses and went out first. I no longer cared. Michael paused on the threshold and turned back. "Mom, are you really going to do this? Are you really going to destroy our family?" "No, Michael," I answered, my sadness transformed into acceptance. "I'm not destroying our family. You two did that when you decided I didn't deserve respect. I'm just picking up the pieces of my dignity." He left in silence, and I closed the door. For the first time in months, the sound of the lock didn't feel like prison bars. It felt like the gate protecting the lady of the house. I stood in the living room, breathing in a quiet that no longer felt empty, but full of possibility. I walked to the window and watched them head to the car, arguing loudly, no longer my problem. The phone rang. Angela was calling. "How'd it go, warrior?" she asked, her voice full of genuine tenderness, the sound I had missed so much. "Liberating," I told Angela, surprised at how true it sounded. "I'm no longer the victim of my own kindness." "And how do you feel now?" Angela asked. I paused a beat to really listen to myself. "I feel like Janice again, the woman who raised a child alone, who built a decent life with her own hands." Angela laughed. "That's my friend. Want me to come over and keep you company?" "No," I said. This time, being alone didn't scare me. "I want to be alone with myself. We have a lot to talk about." After hanging up, I walked through the house as if rediscovering it. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee, the kind I like. Not the kind Brittany used to buy because it was trendy. I sat at the head of the dining table, my seat, the place I'd been subtly edged out of for months. The first sip told me I was right. The taste of freedom beats any fake comfort. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I hired a cleaning service to erase every trace of Brittany, changed every lock as promised, fully restored my bank account. I redecorated the house to my taste, my memories, my decisions. Angela became my official best friend. I called my cousins back, invited the book club friends again. The house filled again with real laughter, meaningful conversation, genuine love. Michael called me many times. He left tearful voicemails, promises to change, pleas for forgiveness, but I had learned to tell the difference between genuine remorse and panic over consequences. On the 30th day, I went to Angela's place. I didn't want to be present when they came for their things. That evening, I found the keys on the dining table with a note. "Mom, someday you'll understand we only wanted what was best for everyone. I hope you're happy in your loneliness." I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. Even in goodbye, they wouldn't take responsibility. But I was happy not in loneliness, but in freedom. 6 months later, as I watered the new bed's varieties I chose, that I like, the doorbell rang. Michael stood there, thinner, eyes humbled. "Mom," he said softly, "I'm here to apologize for real, with no excuses." I looked at him for a long time, the man who had once been my little boy, my greatest pride, and also my greatest disappointment. "Where's Brittany?" I asked. She's gone. Turns out when there's no easy money and no free house, I'm not so attractive anymore." I nodded, not surprised. "What do you want, Michael?" "I want to apologize. I want a chance to get to know my mom again, to respect you the way you deserve. And what do you offer me in return?" I had learned that unconditional love can slide into permitted abuse. "I offer you genuine respect, quality time, the son you used to have, not the selfish man I became." "And if I don't accept?" I asked, needing to know forgiveness wasn't an obligation. "I'll respect your decision, because I finally understand that respecting you is loving you." That line, "respecting you is loving you," rang in my chest like bells of reconciliation. "Come in," I said with clear conditions. "This is still my house. These are still my rules. If you're disrespectful even once, there won't be a second chance." Michael nodded, real tears in his eyes. I made 2 cups of coffee. "In the end," I said, "it isn't a pension or a house that defines a person. It's the ability to get back up again and again, to know you deserve more than crumbs of love." As I poured coffee into my favorite cups, the set I had kept tucked away for months, I knew I'd made the right choice. I didn't just take back my house and my money. I took back my dignity, my voice, and my place in the world, and at 70, that was a most precious gift I could give myself. 2 years later, when I was 72, I sipped my morning coffee in the garden I had designed myself. The hydrangeas, my favorite flower, were blooming more beautifully than ever, as if they'd been waiting for me to regain my strength so they could show theirs. The house was a home again, genuine laughter, deeper conversations, every corner reflecting its true owner. I redecorated every room, not out of whim, but as an act of reclamation. Every piece chosen by me, every color in my taste, every space arranged for my comfort. Angela remained my soulmate friend, but no longer my only lifeline. My circle widened naturally once I stopped living in shame. The book club met regularly. My cousins dropped by without asking anyone's permission. I even started taking painting classes at the community center, tapping into talents that had slept for decades. "Janice," my painting instructor told me last week, "you have a very particular percent. Eye for color, as if you've learned to see life in a completely new way." She was right. I'd learned to see life with eyes that no longer sought constant approval, that no longer feared being alone, that no longer confused love with submission. Michael visited every Sunday. At first it was tense, full of awkward silences and small talk. But gradually we rebuilt a relationship based on mutual respect. He had to learn to see me as a whole person, not just mom, a function in his life. "What surprises me," he said during one of our Sunday walks in the park, "is discovering that my mother has her own opinions about politics, about art, about life. I never bothered to ask what you really thought. Because you never considered my thoughts might be interesting," I answered honestly, without bitterness. "To you, I was the one who cooked, who cleaned, who was always available." He took that in without excuses. "You're right, and I'm ashamed it took me so long to see it." Those unvarnished talks became the foundation of our new relationship, one where I wasn't only the sacrificial mother, but Janice, a woman with her own story, her own dreams, and the right to prioritize her own happiness. The most notable change wasn't in my house or my relationships, it was in me. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman not younger, but more alive, eyes with a spark that had been missing, a straighter posture, a smile that came more often and felt real. I spent time on self-care not to impress anyone, but because I deserved it. I bought clothes I liked, got a modern haircut, even if a few neighbors shook their heads, and felt renewed. The doctor said, "You look different. Have you been exercising?" "I've been working out my self-respect," I joked, and it was true. Self-respect is a muscle. It takes steady training to grow strong. My finances improved noticeably, without Brittany burning money on frivolities. Without supporting 2 able-bodied adults, my pension was enough to live comfortably and to treat myself to things I'd long denied. I hired garden help so I could enjoy the flowers without heavy labor, bought a new TV for my room so I could watch what I liked without bothering anyone, and began to travel small trips, nothing extravagant, but meaningful for someone who hadn't left the city in years. Last month I visited my cousin Elena, the one I had once received in the yard during Brittany's reign. This time, I stayed a full week in the guest room, treated like the special visitor I deserved to be. "I can't believe you're the same woman from 2 years ago," Elena said. "Back then you were dimmed, sad, as if you'd given up. Now you shine." She was right, I had gotten my shine back. Not the glow of youth, but something better, the radiance of authenticity. Nights no longer meant lonely sadness. I enjoyed my own small rituals, a bath with scented salts, uninterrupted reading, blasting the music I liked if I felt like it. My home was my sanctuary again, not a prison. Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Then I remembered those months of humiliation, the creeping belief that I truly was a burden, a presence to be endured, and I reminded myself, I chose dignity over false comfort, respect over toxic love. Angela remained my moral anchor. "Janice," she said recently, "you're an example for women of our generation. You proved it's never too late to claim what you deserve." Her words filled me with pride and responsibility. I got involved at the community center, sharing my experience with older women in similar situations, not as a professional, but as someone who had walked through fire and come back stronger. The most important thing I tell them in those circles: real love never asks you to trade your dignity, and a true family doesn't require you to disappear. Some stories pierced me: women who had handed control of their finances to manipulative children, women convinced they were too old to decide for themselves. I held their hands and reminded them, "You're not too late. You are the owner of the house that is your life." Then I smiled, light but sure, like the night I threw open the door that Christmas, letting the cold air sweep out the poison and returning me to my small throne as lady of the house in my own home. Many women I met at the community center had once accepted scraps of affection because they feared being completely alone. I told them, being alone isn't the worst thing. The worst is living among your own people while feeling utterly alone. My story accidentally became a lighthouse for many, that you can rebuild a dignified life even in later years, that 70 doesn't mean surrender, that respect can be reclaimed no matter your age. Draining the last of my morning coffee and getting ready for a day full of possibility, I thought of Brittany not with bitterness, but, strangely, with a bit of gratitude. Without her toxic presence, maybe I'd never have dug up my own strength. Without those humiliations, maybe I'd never have valued my dignity so much. Without the manipulation, maybe I'd never have learned to distinguish true love from emotional blackmail. At 71, I learned the most important lesson of my life. Loving yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-care. Choosing dignity over comfort isn't arrogance, it's wisdom. As the sunlight flooded the garden I'd just renovated in Portland, I knew for certain I'd made the right decision. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how old you are or how many mistakes you've made, it's always the perfect time to start treating yourself with the respect you deserve. In the end, Janice's story isn't just about reclaiming a house, but about reclaiming dignity, and it reminds us that love in a family must always come with respect. Forgiveness can open the door home, but boundaries are the key that keeps kinship from eroding. When a mother learns to say, "Enough," a son relearns the true name of love. Respecting your mother is loving your mother. And sometimes you have to walk through loneliness to see clearly that who you are with matters less than being yourself among the people you love. If you were Janice, what would you do at the moment you set that 30-day deadline? Choose immediate forgiveness or hold the boundary to the end? In your view, where is the healthy line between love and over-sacrifice in a family? Share your perspective in the comments so we can all learn from each other's experiences. If stories like this resonate with you, I'd love for you to stick around so you won't miss the next chapters where we listen together, reflect together, and grow together in accountable love.